All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive on something that, impacts a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
The British pound against the US dollar
Yeah.
over the next 3 months.
Yeah.
And we've got two sources here to help us kind of unpack this.
Okay.
One takes a technical approach.
Right.
The other one features a bold prediction from Citibank.
Oh, cool.
So let's...
Yeah, this will be interesting to see what they have to say because you'll see there are actually two very different ways to look at the same question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our technical analysis source starts by saying that GBP USD is in a short-term downtrend.
Okay.
It even shows key support levels around 1.2 thousand.
Uh-huh.
And it says if the pair drops below that, it could be a sign of more weakness to come.
Interesting.
What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, remember, currency values are all relative.
Right.
So when a pair like GBP USD is trending down, it could mean a couple of things.
Okay.
Either the pound is weakening, the dollar is getting stronger,
Right.
or maybe it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I did notice that the US dollar has been performing quite well against other currencies recently.
That's a good observation, and it highlights the fact that you can't look at GBP USD in isolation.
Okay.
Right? Global events and the relative strength of other economies definitely play a role.
Okay, so how does this technical analysis actually help us predict where the pound might be headed?
Well, so think of support and resistance levels, like guideposts on a map for currency prices.
Okay.
When the price hits a support level,
Uh-huh.
like the 1.2 thousand we just mentioned,
Yeah.
buyers tend to step in,
Okay.
which could cause the price to bounce back up.
Right, almost like a floor for the price.
Exactly.
Okay.
But if the price breaks through that support level,
Mm-hmm.
it might signal that sellers are in control,
Okay.
and the price could continue to fall.
So we need to keep a close eye on that 1.2 thousand level.
Exactly.
What else does the technical analysis tell us?
Well, it also uses moving averages, which help smooth out the daily noise and show us the bigger trend.
Looking at a chart of GBP USD, you can see the 50-day moving average has been acting as a ceiling for the price,
Uh-huh.
adding to the case for a downtrend.
Ah, I see. But if the price were to rally above that 50-way moving average,
Yeah.
that would be a more bullish signal, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It would suggest that the sellers are losing momentum and the buyers might be taking control.
Okay.
It's a bit like a tug of war between bulls and bears.
Got it. Now, I know there's a whole world of technical indicators out there like RSI, MACD, and stochastics, which
Yeah.
I find fascinating.
Right.
But let's move on to Citibank's prediction for now.
Okay, sure.
They actually have a more optimistic view, right?
Yes, they do. While the technical analysis is sending cautious signals.
Right.
Citibank is actually recommending shorting UUR GBP,
Okay.
which means they think the pound will rise against the euro.
Wait, how does that relate to GBP USD?
Well, currencies don't operate in isolation. They're all interconnected.
Okay.
If the pound strengthens against the euro...
It could also impact its value against the dollar.
Got it.
It's all part of the global currency market puzzle.
Okay, so a rising tide lifts all boats, even if those boats are different currencies.
You could say that.
Okay.
But what makes Citibank's prediction even more interesting is that GBP EUR has actually been struggling lately.
Really?
It's dropped nearly 3% since December.
So they're going against the recent trend.
Yeah.
What's their reasoning for this bullish outlook?
They've laid out 3 conditions for a pound recovery.
Okay.
First, global fixed income yields need to peak.
Okay.
Second, a UK policy announcement needs to calm market fears.
Okay.
And third, EU GBP needs to reach a point where shorting becomes attractive.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. But before we dive into each of those conditions, let me ask, are any of them already in play?
That's the most interesting part.
Okay.
Citibank believes that third condition, a move towards 0.8470, 0.85 in EUR GBP, has already happened. Right? They see that technical level being hit as like a key trigger for a potential pound rally.
Interesting. So they're basing this prediction on a combination of technical analysis and their own assessment of market sentiment.
Exactly.
It sounds like they're really trying to connect the dots between all these different factors.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that these conditions are all interconnected.
Okay.
For example, if global bond yields start to fall, that could ease inflationary pressures and boost investor confidence,
Right.
potentially leading to a more favorable policy announcement from the UK government.
Okay. I'm starting to see how these pieces of the puzzle fit together.
Yeah.
But let's break down each condition a bit further.
True.
What exactly do they mean by global fixed income yields peaking?
Good question.
Yeah.
So fixed income yields, like those on government bonds,
Okay.
are essentially the return an investor gets for lending money to a government.
Right.
When these yields rise,
Yeah.
It can signal that investors are demanding a higher return
Okay.
for the perceived risk of holding that debt.
So if yields are peaking, it could mean that investors are becoming less concerned about risk,
Exactly.
which would be a positive sign for the pound.
Precisely. Lower risk perception usually translates to greater demand for that currency.
Okay.
And speaking of risk,
Yeah.
what about that second condition? What kind of policy announcement would calm market fears?
Well, I imagine anything that addresses the UK's economic challenges, like inflation or slowing growth, could boost confidence.
Right.
Perhaps some fiscal measures to stimulate the economy, or a commitment to keeping interest rates stable.
Those are good examples. Investors are looking for signs that the government has a handle on the situation and a clear plan for the future.
Okay.
Any uncertainty or mixed messages can spook the markets and lead to further pound weakness.
Got it. So Citibank believes that 2 out of their 3 conditions for a pound recovery are within reach,
Yeah.
potentially paving the way for a rebound. But let's not forget our technical analysis,
Right.
which highlighted those key support levels around 1.200.
Right. It's important to consider both the technical and fundamental picture. While Citibank's prediction is certainly intriguing,
Yeah.
the technicals are still suggesting caution.
So how do we reconcile these two perspectives?
Yeah.
It feels like we're getting mixed signals here.
That's the challenge with financial markets, right? They're complex and often unpredictable.
Right.
We have to weigh the evidence and draw our own conclusions.
Okay, so let's say, for argument's sake, that Citibank's prediction comes true,
Okay.
and the pound starts to rally against the euro. What kind of impact could that have on GBP USD?
Well, as we discussed earlier, currencies are all interconnected.
Right.
A stronger pound against the euro could make it more attractive to investors holding dollars,
Okay.
leading to increased demand for GBP and potentially pushing GBP USD higher.
Right. That makes sense. But what about those support and resistance levels we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Would they still be relevant in that scenario?
Yeah. Absolutely. Support and resistance levels are always important considerations,
Okay.
regardless of the fundamental outlook.
Right.
Even if the pound is fundamentally strong, it could still face technical resistance at certain price levels.
So it's really about finding the confluence of factors, both technical and fundamental,
Exactly.
that could drive the price in a particular direction.
Right.
And right now, we have some interesting signals pointing in opposite directions.
Precisely. And that's what makes this such a fascinating case study.
Yeah.
We have the technicals suggesting caution with GBP USD in a downtrend
Right.
and key support levels to watch.
Yep.
But we also have Citibank's bullish prediction
Right.
based on their assessment of global economic conditions and market sentiment.
It's almost like a battle between these two forces.
Yeah.
The technicals are saying be careful,
Right.
while Citibank is saying get ready for a rebound.
Mm-hmm.
But even if the pound does start to rally,
Yeah.
there are still other factors to consider, right?
Of course, we can't forget about the broader economic landscape.
Right.
Both the UK and the US economies are facing their own unique challenges.
Yeah.
And those challenges will undoubtedly influence the direction of GBP USD.
Right. Things like inflation, interest rates, and economic growth are all critical factors.
Yeah.
And then there's always the wild card of geopolitical events,
Exactly.
which can throw a wrench into even the best laid plans.
We live in a dynamic and unpredictable world,
Yeah.
and that uncertainty is reflected in the currency markets.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
We've explored the technical analysis, delved into Citibank's intriguing prediction,
Right.
and touched on the broader economic and geopolitical factors at play.
We've also emphasized the importance of considering both technical and fundamental analysis
Right.
when trying to make sense of currency movements.
And we've learned that predicting the future of GBP USD is like trying to solve a puzzle with constantly moving pieces.
Indeed, it's a complex and dynamic process that requires constant vigilance, critical thinking, and a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances.
So, dear listener, what stands out to you from all this?
Yeah.
What are your key takeaways? Well, for me, it's just fascinating to see how a big bank like Citibank can have such a different outlook
Right.
compared to what the technical indicators are suggesting.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about who to believe.
That's a great point, and it highlights the fact that there's no single right way to analyze the markets.
Right.
Citibank might have access to information or insights that aren't reflected in the technical analysis alone, or they could simply be interpreting the data differently.
It's almost like they're placing a bet on their own analysis and expertise. They're saying, we see something that the charts aren't showing yet.
Exactly. They're taking a calculated risk based on their assessment of the situation.
Yeah.
And that's something we all have to do when making financial decisions. You gather information, you weigh the risks and potential rewards, and then you make a judgment call.
So if you were to put yourself in the shoes of an investor listening to this right now,
Yeah.
how would you approach this GBP USD situation?
Okay.
Would you be leaning towards Citibank's optimistic outlook or playing it safe based on the technical analysis?
Well, first I would emphasize that I'm not giving financial advice.
Of course.
Every investor has a unique risk tolerance and investment goals.
Right.
But if I were personally evaluating this situation,
Yeah.
I'd probably take a balanced approach.
Yeah.
I'd definitely keep an eye on those key technical levels we discussed,
Right.
particularly that 1.2000 support.
Right.
If GBP USD breaks below that, it could signal further weakness,
Okay.
even if Citibank's prediction eventually plays out.
So a bit of hedging your bets, not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Diversification is key in any investment strategy.
Right.
But I'd also be paying close attention to the news and economic data coming out of both the UK and the US. Any surprises on the inflation front, for example, could quickly shift the landscape for GBP USD.
That makes sense. So much of this comes down to just like staying informed
Right.
and being prepared to react to unexpected developments.
Yeah.
It's like we said earlier, it's a puzzle with constantly moving pieces.
Absolutely. And that's what makes the financial markets so dynamic and frankly so fascinating. There's
Yeah.
always something new to learn and new challenges to navigate.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one key takeaway you would want our listeners to walk away with?
I'd say it's the importance of critical thinking.
Right.
Don't blindly follow any single prediction or analysis, no matter how reputable the source.
Right.
Take the time to understand the reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
Consider alternative viewpoints.
Okay.
And always do your own research before making any investment decisions.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of GBP USD.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
But hopefully you feel better equipped to make sense of this complex and ever-changing market.
I hope so too.
And to our listeners, keep an eye on those charts. Stay informed about the global economy. And remember, knowledge is power. Thanks for tuning in.